Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on Facebook Live. I'm Sam. I'm with NATP's marketing department, and I have a very special guest with me today, Roger, who is the founder of Tax Help Software. Roger is also very in tune with tax season, and he's an EA, so he really knows what he's talking about when it comes to tax preparation. And so thanks for joining me today, Roger. Really appreciate it. I know you said you were in Florida and there's a little bit of weather turbulence down there, so hopefully you're staying safe and everything is working okay for you so far.
Yeah, knock on wood, internet's good, so that's the concern.
Good. So I know it's tax season and there is a lot going on, especially probably on your end dealing with transcripts. But that being said, let's just jump right in. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for those of us who might not be familiar?
Gotcha. So got started in the tax industry as a deputy sheriff, got injured in the line of duty. Parents owned a Jackson Hewitt franchise in Atlanta. So went and worked retail tax franchises for about 5 or 6 years. Had 20 to 25 EAs that give and take over the years that I would always catch pulling transcripts and standing by a fax machine. So I told my people as their general manager, buy a transcript analyzer. So after a couple of weeks, they came back and said, there isn't one. And I said, there has to be one. There's too much data for you to be doing this and not be out there. So ended up doing the research and there was no transcript analyzer. So ended up building the early phases in an Excel spreadsheet of what's now Tax Help Software, which is the transcript analyzer for the IRS. It gets the transcripts and analyzes it. And gosh, going on 11 years now, we seem to always learn more and more. So we've now got just a tenfold understanding of what we did the first year of transcripts. And with COVID and all the other challenges, transcripts have become more vital for everybody because a lot of these credits, the most accurate numbers actually on the transcript for some of these credits and other things that we need to do to file tax returns. So we've seen demand shoot through the roof this past year. But anyways, that's what I did do taxes for a long time. I'm not current on current taxes. I don't even do my own taxes anymore. But I keep my hand in it. I could do a tax return tomorrow if I wanted to, but I would not do complicated tax returns. So
got it. Yeah. So backing up a little bit, you explained what a transcript is. It is basically a listing of all of the tax information for a tax preparer to know about their clients. Is that somewhat accurate?
Yeah, so there's one that's the tax return, which is the tax return transcript, which is just almost a line by line. It's not 100%, but it's about 95% of what's on the return will be there. And then the account transcript, the best way to describe it is it's your debit credit account with the Department of Treasury. And each year you get a new one. I mean, that's a very basic understanding, but it basically shows the money going in and out to you and the federal government for your account.
Sure. So when requesting a transcript, what does a tax preparer need to know?
So there's several different methods. We'll focus on the most common. There's, with anything else in life, there's not just one option. But for a tax professional, what I've seen folks this year, obviously we sell a product that assists with this, but the first thing a tax professional will need to do if they want to download it without the customer's involvement is to get either an 8821 or a 2848 signed. And there's now some online options, but most people are still using the older forms. And then you either fax them or upload them to the IRS CAF unit. And then and I've got some news on how long that takes, but between 1 day and 8 weeks, you'll get permission to access transcripts. That's probably the most popular method. There is another option where you can get the 8821 or the 2848 signed today, call the IRS, but as we know, calling the IRS doesn't always guarantee you're going to get through at all. So that option's kind of lacked this year. It's not one of the primary options. So the number one option currently for tax professionals has been either have the client go in and register for an online account and get their own transcripts, which has been problematic because it's a complicated process and it involved facial recognition. So then the IRS backed out of that and then said, well, we'll give you the option, but we won't get rid of it. I don't even know where they are right now with that system because they've kind of gone back and forth on it. But let's just say the taxpayer on their own, it's very complex. So most people have focused on using the upload portal for the 2848 and the 8821.
Okay. To
get the transcripts, and then either use software like ours or manually download the transcripts to get them and take a look.
Okay. So this tax season, is an understatement to say there has been some odd circumstances going on and some challenges that tax pros and taxpayers face. But can you tell us a little bit about what you've been hearing or seeing from tax pros that impacts your business and transcripts?
Yes, absolutely. I've got some notes. I got a couple notes over here to make sure I get them all. So, so the biggest one is the EIP and the child tax credits have been a challenge with the IRS reporting numerous errors on the mailed letters.
Mm-hmm.
So leading up to tax season, they were like, no matter what, everybody's getting a letter. Get this letter, put the number in the system in your tax software, and we won't hold up your return. Mm-hmm. And for those that don't know, you almost have to be living under a rock at this point. But if you file a return with something different than what the IRS thinks they sent, mm-hmm. the customer's refund or the taxpayer's refund could, in theory, be held up for, I've heard cases of upwards of almost a year in the most extended cases. And in some cases, there's people that are still waiting on 2020 refunds.
Sure. Yeah.
So the IRS said, hey, use this letter. Right after tax season. They discovered there were some scenarios where the letter didn't match what was in the system. And so it wasn't 100%. There's been some back and forth at the IRS, but I can tell you kind of my knowledge of transcripts. The IRS transcripts will have the most accurate information on what the client actually was sent, not received, that was not sent. And I'll kind of, we had done a video earlier in January. It was all about the tax credits and everything. We archived that. We kind of took it offline because it was, some of the information came and went a little bit. But if you go to taxhelpsoftware.com/NATP, one, that's where we have the NATP special offer. They also have a landing page at NATP. But I have a link to the archive video at taxhelpsoftware.com/NATP. And it talks about how to read the transcripts to actually find the accurate EIP numbers, mm-hmm. and what else is out there. Mm-hmm. Now, what isn't in the video presentation ended up coming out after the presentation, and I'll kind of share that with you right now. So the big consternation or the big problem has been, what if what the client says they received is different than what the IRS says they sent? And that could very possibly be true. And I've heard the horror stories where people have said, hey, did you get 4,100? Nope, never got it, never saw it. And sat down on bank statements and said, yes, you did, here it is. Mm-hmm. Oh, there you go. So if you had filed incorrectly or what's not matching the IRS numbers, that refund is going to be held up. So the importance here is to file what the IRS has sent. IRS came out in about the middle of January of this year and said, look, if what we sent you doesn't match with what you received, you being the taxpayer, then what we need you to do is file for a, let's see, first off, file the return using the IRS numbers, right? If a refund is important, you don't want to deal with an extension and wait on what I'm about to tell you to take place, file with the numbers that the IRS has, and then be prepared to, in the future, do the amendment to get the additional funds, okay? There is some debate on should you file the return if it's, technically it's not correct. I'm good doing it in this case just because the IRS is broken. This is a workaround. So if you look at it as a workaround and not deception, you're not asking for more money than you've received. Okay? The next is to request a payment track from the IRS. And to start a payment trace, you can call their 800 number. For those that are wanting to write it down, it's 1-800-919-9835. I don't know how often they will answer, and I'll read that number off one more time. 800-919-9835, or you can mail or fax the completed Form 3911 taxpayer statement regarding refund, right? Follow the process to have the payment reissued. So if your client didn't get the money, you're still filing the return correctly. don't go through it from the amended return point of view. Have them track the refund. And if you did not receive the refund or the check got stolen, then you follow those procedures on the IRS website. So if it maybe went to an account your client closed, then there are procedures for you to get the money without having to do an amended return. So that's kind of the latest updated information that I have as far as that goes, is do a payment tracking on it. So file the return with what the IRS said they sent. Mm-hmm. Worst case, you can always amend that later on. And you're not claiming to get more money back. I'm not saying file a return that indicates don't do recovery rebate and say, hey, send me a whole lot more money. You're basically claiming what the IRS says you received, and then you're handling it through this other process, which is do a payment track on all the payments for EIP or advanced child tax credit, and then go through the process of I did not receive the payment. Okay. And there's been a big confusion in the community about I didn't receive it, so it was never sent. And that's not how the IRS looks at it. They're saying we sent it. Mm-hmm. You didn't receive it. There's a different procedure than the recovery rebate credit, which was kind of the big misconception early in the tax season. Interesting. So that's kind of the biggest piece of advice I can give to everybody out there. And then we have the archive webinar on the different options. But even in that one, we cautioned against using the letters. And one of the big gotchas in the letters is, and I forget if it was this year or last year, but they switched. Spouses got identical letters where they split the amount. Mm-hmm. But I think last year it was a total amount for both spouses. So you got two letters with a total. This year they split it, or maybe it was vice versa. But there was so much confusion as to how the IRS calculated what was on the letter, and it wasn't consistent over the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. So, fingers crossed, all the software companies that we had met with the IRS in the lead up to tax season, that was the number one concern. I don't do tax software, but I'm in the room when they discuss it. Mm-hmm. And, it was Drake's and Block and Intuit, and everybody was like, if you're asking for us to reconcile, please create an automated system where the IRS will reconcile and either send the difference and do it that way. Don't make us do it. And the IRS just couldn't make it happen with technology. But that was the fear going back almost a year for all the software companies. And my understanding is, the number of held returns continues to climb. Mm-hmm. Okay. And, the one piece of advice I gave in that video that we did, the archived webinar, was if you haven't done it already and you've kind of missed your window with us being in March, except for your late filers, create a letter that says, understand if you file with anything different than what the IRS expects, mm-hmm. your refund can be delayed. Okay. And that way, when they come back storming in your office in 4 weeks and say, you screwed my return up, you can say, look, I didn't screw it up. I did my best with the information you provided. If you went the extra step with the transcripts, keep them in their file. So you can say, look, this is what the IRS said they had. If they're now saying that doesn't match, that's the IRS. Mm-hmm. We've taken our best bite at the apple. Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm.
Throwing you a curveball here a little bit. If for whatever you can, or maybe, you can't say, projecting out, I know we're still in tax season, but projecting out to next tax season, from what you know, do you think that some of these technology issues might be figured out from the IRS's side?
So, yes. I think the IRS is going to be caught up. I guess the best way to put it is the IRS will be in a better position at the start of the next tax season. Okay. Commissioner Reddick came out and has now said, we're not just deploying 1,500 people. We're deploying more than that. Plus, I think they got emergency funding or something to try to hire 10,000 people. But the problem is they're having trouble finding 10,000 candidates now. Mm-hmm. Right. They're not paying enough. And the fact that we live in a time when a federal job goes without enough applicants is insane to me, because growing up in the 80s, mm-hmm. You used to have to almost inherit a federal job, mm-hmm. even an entry-level position. So I think they're going to be in a better position. I'll throw my 2 cents out, and nothing is behind the scenes knowledge, but I do meet with industry people. I think that when COVID hit, my position was you needed to treat it like a ship that was sinking. Throw all your resources at what's important, plug the holes. The IRS didn't do that. They were slow to act. You can blame whoever you want, Congress for no money, the commissioner, the employees, COVID, but whatever it was, what they're doing now, I felt like needed to be done at the start of COVID. Reposition everybody into just doing your core function, which is processing returns. Okay. And, then start to work on the technology pieces. But I also thought they should have stopped sending all collection letters out, because they then made things worse on themselves by sending out things when they had all this mail that was unopened. So it created the next level, which locked the phone lines up. So going into next year, and I'll actually talk about something that we had kind of on, but it's a technology piece. So we've been getting reports over the past 4 weeks that if folks are using the 8821 and 2848 upload portal, not the online power of attorney, which is a different system that has been very broken. This is where you actually can get an e-signed 8821 or 2848 or a wet signature. I still recommend wet signature, but it's getting better. And you upload them through the 2848, 8821 portal. We have gotten hundreds of reports in the past month from our users, and I've got some pretty big users. Some of the resolution, all the resolution guys that are the big ones use us. And everything that's kind of come down the pike is they're seeing a majority of uploaded 2848s and 8821s being processed in, if not less than 24 hours, less than a week.
That's great.
Faxing is still taking 2 to 4 weeks. So, and not everybody that's uploaded has gotten it back in 1 day. I've had people that have gotten them back in 3 hours. Now, I'm not there to watch. I don't know if they sent one in by fax 2 months ago and it finally got processed. So, but I've seen enough reports where people are filing for new customers that they're actually getting near instant CAF access. What that will then do is it will not affect the phone lines as much. Because if tax practitioners, I read somewhere that 75% of all calls by tax practitioners are to get data from the IRS. Well, if we no longer have to do that, that now frees it up to the tax questions and solving our clients' issues, which is what it was intended to do. My personal opinion is the IRS has a mortgage system for getting transcripts that deployed what's called an OCR, or optical character recognition setup. And what that does is basically can read a PDF document, extract the data, and automatically type it into the system to put it in its most basic. I, Roger Nemeth, think that OCR has been deployed to the CAF unit on some kind of test basis. The IRS has made no announcements. I have been in meetings with the IRS over the past couple of years, and some of them were public, where they have mentioned using OCR to solve CAF processing. So the only thing I can do is, I don't think they hired enough people to get CAF words within a day. I think it had to be some kind of technology solution, and I don't know that it'll be a permanent solution. Maybe they're just adopted it to catch up, but it is working very well now. So the dream for all of us that do transcripts is electronically, let me submit this with some kind of e-signature. While the customer is either in my office or at least within 24 hours, and let me analyze their account and move forward with fixing their problems. So that technology piece, we've seen some significant movement on. The IRS also launched the chat bot on the IRS website this week. I don't have any information on that other than I read a blurb about it and I've seen some advanced stuff. The second phase of the chat bot is supposed to be video conferencing like Samantha and I are now doing with an IRS employee. And, we've heard some things that one IRS employee can have up to 50 chats at a time, but how many live chats can they support? So apparently a human's going to monitor the computer chat when it gets to a point, and then it may say, hey, answer this for me. But it's a better use of time. Anybody that's done a phone call knows that 70 to 80% of a phone call with IRS is dead air, or, hey, how are you doing? I'm doing great. How are the kids? Like it's wasted time and space. I'd rather just say, hi, what is Bob Smith's EIP payment? Thank you. It's less than 30 seconds. They turn that into a 10 to 15 minute phone call. So that's what this chat is supposed to relieve. And it started with an automated chat where the computer or the artificial intelligence will give you a response. I find those to be very ineffective. But the next level of deployment will have real chat with a real person at the IRS, followed by then video conferencing if it needs to elevate.
Well, that sounds like there's some exciting improvements along the way that at least have been happening now.
And I'm a big studier of history, just, I don't know, being a guy, but they always said during wartime, technology made massive advancements. When you see airplanes at the beginning of World War II, at the end, we had jet airplanes. It was the technology moves along. If you look at COVID and the necessity of the crisis, I think that's finally what's got the IRS to move forward. The taxpayer advocate, I think it was Erin Collins. It might have been Nina Olson before she left. One of them said, without COVID, I don't know that the IRS would have adopted e-signatures. And it was an off-the-cuff remark, but it's one I agree with.
Yes.
I have been in on those meetings. They've had e-signature policies and procedures that they've been waiting to push for 5 years. Nobody would ever do it. And all of a sudden, COVID hit, and out of necessity, it becomes what gets things moving forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of businesses on that too.
Hopefully it stays in the toolbox and they don't revert back. The IRS is not going to hire themselves out of the hole that they've dug. They need technology resources to get them not only out of the hole, but to be more efficient in the future.
Sure. Yeah. So last question for you. Well, almost, I think. Why would someone want to use tax help software rather than going directly through the IRS? We kind of covered this. We alluded to time and energy, but is there anything else that you want to share about that?
So just the biggest thing about that is this. It's the speed analysis. So THS consolidates current and past information so the tax pro has a complete understanding of their client situation, and the program looks for missed refunds, credits, penalty abatements, and opportunities, not just in the current year for new customers, but also going back. So it's a great tool. If you can see, you can now understand a new customer just like they were an existing customer for, the past 10 years, the past 5 years. And the reason for THS obviously is the speed of the downloads. And just to give you an idea of statistically where we are and what we've seen at Tax Help Software. So and I've got it on a spreadsheet here. So in 2020, the IRS fulfilled, I had it in my notes and I had to reboot. I believe it was 137 million transcripts were downloaded to tax professionals through e-services in 2020. Last year or earlier, early 2021, the IRS launched a new API. It took Tax Help Software's capacity from 15,000 transcripts a day per user up to 1 million a day, and literally went from 15,000 to 1 million. So this year, Tax Help Software users are averaging over 1 million transcripts a day downloaded. But on top of that, so our weekly average right now is 8.5 million successful downloads.
Okay.
The requests are at 21.5 million. So the reason for the disparity is a lot of people keep checking, waiting on the CAF to be authorized. So they keep trying until they get them. So you actually have 40% of transcript requests are successful, 60% usually fail because you don't have authority yet, or they're identity theft, which it can't get them for that. So right now at this current pace, last year or in 2020, so the statistics of income from the IRS in 2020 is the IRS downloaded 137 million transcripts to tax pros. Tax Help Software users this year alone will attempt to download somewhere around 1.2 billion transcripts and probably download somewhere around 500 million transcripts. So we've seen that increase over the past year with the demand. And on top of it, the IRS just launched something called auto login, where if you're using a software, you can basically give that software the consent where you don't have to log in over and over. You do have to log into the software, but you can say download transcripts. And now with 1 million transcripts, you literally, like a new user could get basically all the transcripts for 1,000 clients in one day.
Wow.
It may take a little longer to process all that data and get the statistics in our system, but getting the data has now become near instantaneous.
That's
and
wonderful.
We've seen just a massive increase in the use of programs because everybody needs to pull transcripts. And if you haven't started already, even if you're not going to use software, start getting 8821 signed this year for next year. Don't have clients come in for next year because there'll be some other tax credit that you'll need to reconcile. And everybody that I know that's gotten either power of attorneys or 8821s in advance in prior years, their lives have been much easier than the people trying to get the data this year.
Sure. Interesting. Anything else, Roger, that you want to share or discuss today? We've covered quite a bit in a short amount of time, so I want to be mindful of your time too. Is there anything else?
And it stopped raining, so yay.
Yay.
Pretty much, I would tell people to avoid using the online power of attorney tax information. It's where the client has to go in, the taxpayer has to create an account, and you have to create an account. That's different than the upload portal. So I want to differentiate those two.
Yep.
The online POA, it's not an online 2848, it's an online POA, has been very problematic. It had hoped to be an instant turnaround, and some people have had limited success with it. But I would caution people, use that to play with it, but not as your primary source of getting data because it's been so problematic. And I hope the IRS will fix that going forward or hybrid it with the upload portal. And just, follow the tips we gave you early on about using the payment reconciliation instead of doing an amendment return or the recovery rebate. So you're reconciling what the IRS claims was sent, not with what your client actually received. Go through the reconciliation process if the IRS says that they did send everything properly.
Right.
And, the only other thing I have, is we're getting close to finishing up. And NATP has a landing page as well, which I think you post or something on there. Both offers end up at the same place for NATP members. But for new tax help software users, it's a $250 for 6 months, unlimited use. And after that, it's a $600 renewal fee for the whole year. Plus, we have like a resolution package and a bankruptcy calculator that are a little bit extra if you need those in your firm. But the $250 for 6 months is fully loaded. It lets you test drive everything that we offer. And then at the end of 6 months, you can decide how much you would still like to go forward with or not. And on top of that, we do give you a free 45-day trial to Tax Mentor, which we do 3 tax resolution consultations. And the way that works is we have a program in tax help software. Tax Mentor is a different company, but out of tax help software, you can basically send your transcripts to Tax Mentor, but they're scrubbed of all personal data before they're uploaded. And what that allows us is to share the consultations with other members for learning. So you're actually seeing real cases with all the personal information taken out. And it allows us to give you a tax analysis, basically what myself, Roger Nemeth, an EA with over a decade experience. I haven't been an EA that long, but I've been doing taxes that long. And I also have a tax attorney named Catherine O'Connor that's been doing this for just about a decade now. But you'll get our analysis of how we would handle your case after we review the transcripts. And then there's a little questionnaire like, the things that aren't on the transcript. Is there an RO? Simple things like, is the client deceased? That makes a huge difference. And people forget to tell us that all the time, believe it or not. It's been a great resource, especially with NATP having so many tax pros that are seeing more tax problem clients. It gives you that opportunity where you don't have to go through hundreds of hours of training to handle maybe the more simple cases of resolution for your existing clients, and also make sure you're not missing anything. And sometimes you got to hand those people off. Either you train to do the job correctly, or you refer those clients out to somebody that can help them with more advanced, complicated situations.
Yeah. There's no shame in that. Knowing your limitations is a strength. In that
and you can get to that landing page. I know NATP has a spot, but you can also get to it, and I think it's the same landing page once it gets there. But if you go to taxhelpsoftware.com, you can also look for the NATP member button at the top. That'll also take you to that archived webinar we talked about earlier. Awesome. So if you forget about /NATP, just go to Tax Help Software, click on NATP members. It'll take you, or go through your NATP member portal. And I think we're under the preferred partner discounts, and it'll also take you back, I think, to that same page.
Yeah, and we did post a comment below the video, so there's a link there to make it easy, but we'll post that information make sure it's available for everyone. Roger, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been wonderful. You have so much insight and information, and you're just a really knowledgeable person to talk to in this field. So I thank you so much for your time, especially now when you're busier than ever. So wishing everyone a safe and healthy rest of the tax season. Roger, thanks again. Wishing you lots of help and stay safe with those storms. Hopefully everything stays okay. And then we will talk to you all next time. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks. Bye.